Singapore is not a country. It is a well-packaged financial instrument. Every time someone says Singapore is perfect, what they actually mean is the balance sheet looks clean, the streets are quiet, and nothing ugly interrupts the brochure. This is not accidental. This is design. Singapore's global image is engineered with the precision of a structured bond. Low volatility, predictable returns, minimal noise, maximum confidence. Investors love it, governments envy it, influencers romanticize it, and locals quietly do the math at 2 a.m., wondering how a world-class salary still feels like a temporary loan. The illusion begins with efficiency worship. Trains arrive on time, paperwork moves fast, laws are clear, taxes are neat. GDP per capita shines like a showroom car that is never actually driven. The message is simple: if everything runs smoothly, society must be healthy. That logic is adorable. Also wrong. Efficiency is not prosperity, it is compression. Singapore compresses chaos, dissent, and inconvenience the way financial engineering compresses risk. It does not remove the risk, it hides it. And like all hidden leverage, it looks brilliant right up until it doesn't. Let's talk money. Because money is the real religion here. Singapore sells itself as a place where talent is rewarded, but the reward structure is heavily skewed toward capital, not labour. Asset owners float upward, wage earners tread water. The stock market rises, property prices climb, REITs sparkle, private banking lounges expand. Meanwhile, the median household recalculates groceries, childcare, insurance, transport, and rent like a quarterly earnings call that never beats expectations. Real estate is the altar. Housing is framed as stability, but priced like speculation. Public housing is praised as affordable while quietly absorbing price inflation through upgrading, resale premiums, and debt normalization. Private housing exists as a status signal and a wealth filter. The message is clear. If you can't afford to live comfortably here, you simply mispriced yourself. That's not national confidence. That's market discipline applied to human beings. The state-managed narrative insists this is meritocracy, but meritocracy that requires inherited capital, perfect timing, and zero personal disruption is just aristocracy with spreadsheets. Singapore's financial system is ruthlessly logical, and that is precisely the problem. Everything is optimized for investor trust, not citizen elasticity. When global capital sneezes, policy adjusts instantly. When households strain, they are told to adapt, reskill, downgrade expectations, or smile harder. This is where the illusion becomes fragile. A society can endure inequality. A society can endure pressure. What it cannot endure indefinitely is being told that pressure is proof of success. Singapore's perfection depends on silence, not repression. Silence through structure. Rules so clear that resistance feels pointless. Incentives so sharp that dissent feels expensive. A social contract written in numbers, not words. And here's the quiet risk no glossy report mentions. When a nation turns itself into a product, its people become customers who can cancel emotionally long before they leave physically. That disengagement doesn't riot, it doesn't shout, it withdraws. Fewer children, less loyalty, more exit plans, more Malaysia on weekends, more I'll stay for now. This is not collapse. This is hollowing, and hollow systems look strongest right before they crack, because stress has nowhere left to go except inward. If this analysis already feels uncomfortably accurate, congratulations, you are the target audience they never put in the brochure. Pause here. Subscribe, like, share. Not because the algorithm deserves it, but because conversations like this get buried when they make advertisers nervous and policymakers itchy. Singapore loves one word more than GDP: stability. Stability is the magic spell. It excuses everything. It ends every argument. It turns discomfort into civic duty. Question rising costs? Stability. Ask about inequality? Stability. Feel squeezed between wages and assets? Stability, again. In finance, stability means low volatility. In politics, it means low friction. In society, it means predictable behavior. Singapore achieved stability not by eliminating conflict, but by pricing it out. Democracy here doesn't disappear. It gets converted into compliance via incentives. You can speak, you can vote, you can complain. But the system quietly teaches you that nothing good comes from pushing too hard. Promotions are easier when you don't rock boats. Housing feels safer when you don't stand out. Careers flow smoother when opinions stay bland. This is not censorship. It's cost-benefit analysis applied to citizenship. Markets love this. Investors adore it. No strikes, no chaos, no surprises. Labour behaves. Policy continuity reassures capital. The state becomes a guarantor of calm, like a central bank for social behaviour. But here's the problem. No one in a suit wants to say out loud, stability suppresses feedback. In financial markets, when price discovery is distorted, bubbles form. In societies, when dissent is smoothed away, stress accumulates invisibly. People stop protesting and start internalizing. They don't demand change. They quietly downgrade dreams. This is why Singapore's stress doesn't look like anger. It looks like spreadsheets. Young professionals calculate whether children are financially rational. Middle-aged workers worry about medical costs more than retirement dreams. Everyone tracks CPF balances like a life support monitor, hoping the math still works when they're old. And the state reassures them with charts. GDP grows, reserves expand, credit ratings shine. Sovereign wealth funds post strong returns. The nation's balance sheet is immaculate, but household balance sheets tell a less poetic story. High leverage, long mortgages, rising living costs, narrow margins for error. This is where discipline replaces democracy. Not because people are forced to obey, but because the system makes obedience economically efficient. Break the rules and you don't get arrested. You get excluded. Speak too loudly and doors close quietly. Fail financially and there is no cultural romance about struggle, only personal shame. In Singapore, failure is framed as miscalculation, not misfortune. That framing is lethal for long-term social resilience. Why? Because when pressure becomes individualized, collective solutions vanish. Everyone thinks they are the problem. Nobody thinks the structure is. This is excellent for maintaining order. Terrible for adapting to shocks. What happens when global capital slows? When property stops climbing? When jobs become more volatile? When AI eats white-collar stability faster than policymakers predicted? A society trained for discipline struggles with uncertainty. Flexibility requires debate. Debate requires discomfort. Discomfort breaks the illusion. And the illusion must be protected, because once people realize stability has a price tag, they start asking who's paying it. If this chapter made you slightly uneasy, good. Unease means awareness. Awareness is bad for propaganda, but great for survival. Like the video, subscribe. Share it with someone who still thinks stable automatically means healthy. If you want to understand Singapore, forget the speeches, ignore the slogans, skip the global hub poetry, just look at property. Singapore didn't merely encourage home ownership, it hardwired national identity into real estate. Housing is not shelter here, it is retirement, status, security, political calm, a substitute for social welfare, a proxy for hope, one asset, one direction, forever up. That's the dream. And in finance, when everyone believes an asset only goes up, that asset stops being an investment and starts being a religion. Public housing is marketed as affordable stability, but functions as a leveraged wealth product. Long mortgages normalize lifelong debt. Price appreciation is quietly celebrated because it keeps households compliant and optimistic. When your net worth depends on the system continuing exactly as is, rebellion becomes financially irrational. This is brilliant governance, also extremely fragile. Because Singapore is not diversified at the household level, the state is diversified, globally invested. hedge funds, equities, private equity, infrastructure, currencies. The sovereign balance sheet is sophisticated. The citizen balance sheet? Property, CPF, salary. That's it. When housing prices rise, everyone feels smarter. When they stall, anxiety creeps in. When they fall, the entire social mood darkens. Not because people lose houses, but because they lose the narrative. And here's the part nobody likes to admit. Singapore's property market is not just driven by local fundamentals, it is powered by global capital inflows. Foreign wealth parks here because it feels safe, orderly, rule-bound, predictable. That money doesn't care about local wages. It cares about capital preservation. So prices decouple, locals stretch, debt grows longer, risk concentrates. This works beautifully in a rising global liquidity cycle. But cycles end. If global money tightens, if capital reallocates, if regional competition intensifies, property becomes a pressure point instead of a cushion. Suddenly, the thing that kept society calm becomes the thing everyone watches nervously. And you cannot cut interest rates forever without consequences. You cannot rely on asset inflation to replace wage growth indefinitely. At some point, people notice that their lives feel smaller, even as the skyline gets taller. This is the one-bet problem. Singapore has bet social stability on a single equation. Order plus capital inflow, plus property appreciation. Harmony. As long as that equation holds, the illusion shines. But if one variable slips, there is no emotional hedge, no cultural release valve, no tradition of loud correction, just quiet recalculation. That's not resilience. That's precision engineering with no redundancy. If this chapter made you realize your home behaves suspiciously like a financial derivative, then good. Awareness is cheaper than denial. Like the video, subscribe. Share it with someone who still thinks property prices are a personality trait. Singapore loves the phrase human capital. It sounds respectful, almost affectionate, like people are valued. In practice, human capital here is treated the way markets treat machinery, useful, productive, and replaceable once depreciation sets in. The system runs beautifully because people absorb the shock. Long hours, constant upskilling, relentless benchmarking, quiet competition with younger, cheaper, more flexible versions of yourself. Productivity climbs. Burnout is rebranded as ambition. Fatigue is framed as a temporary inefficiency you are expected to fix on your own time. And people do, because the alternative is falling behind in a city where falling behind is existential. This is the hidden cost of perfection. Singapore doesn't break people loudly, it wears them down politely. Mental health statistics creep upward, but are discussed softly. Birth rates collapse, but are explained with lifestyle charts. Aging accelerates, but is managed through policy tweaks and PR optimism. Everyone knows something is off. No one wants to be the one who says it's structural. Why? Because the system rewards endurance, not reflection. If you struggle, you are encouraged to optimize. If you fail, you are told to retrain. If you question the pace, you are reminded how competitive the world is. The implication is clear. The pressure is external, unavoidable, and therefore not worth debating. This is efficient, also corrosive. Human beings are not balance sheets. They don't compound forever. They don't recover just because policy assumes they should. When people are treated as endlessly adaptable inputs, they eventually respond by disengaging emotionally. This is why the cracks don't look dramatic. They look like fewer marriages. Later marriages, no children, transactional relationships, shorter loyalty to employers, more exit plans disguised as regional opportunities. The state responds rationally. Immigration, talent inflows, demographic smoothing. On paper, it works. On the ground, it changes the social texture. Community thins. Trust becomes conditional. Everyone becomes a temporary resident in their own life. And here's the irony. Singapore markets itself as a place of certainty, but the lived experience increasingly feels provisional, Contracts everywhere, commitments nowhere. Even success feels leased, not owned. This is the burnout paradox. The system depends on people being disciplined, ambitious, and resilient. But it produces an environment that quietly erodes exactly those traits over time. Not in crisis, in accumulation. You don't see riots, you see resignation. If this chapter feels personal, that's because it is. Systems don't feel pressure. People do. Like the video. Subscribe. Share it with someone who insists exhaustion is just the price of excellence. Singapore will not collapse. Let's get that fantasy out of the way first. There will be no sudden breakdown, no dramatic reckoning, no documentary montage of chaos. Systems this disciplined don't fail loudly. They thin out. Fragility here doesn't mean falling apart. It means losing margin, economic margin, emotional margin, demographic margin, political margin. The illusion of perfection depends on one thing above all else. Confidence continuing faster than reality erodes it. As long as people believe the future will be better, tighter systems feel tolerable. As long as asset prices rise, pressure feels justified. As long as global capital trusts the story keeps paying dividends. But confidence is not infinite. It is borrowed from outcomes. When growth slows, expectations don't adjust immediately. They lag. That lag is where fragility lives. You see it when salaries rise slower than costs year after year. When productivity demands increase, but rewards flatten. When young people stop believing effort guarantees stability. When older workers realize the system has no emotional answer for them, the illusion survives through management, not belief. More policies, more incentives, more fine-tuning. Everything optimized just enough to avoid visible failure, but optimization has diminishing returns. Each fix delivers less relief than the last. At some point, people stop asking for solutions and start quietly planning exits, not mass emigration. That would be noticeable. Selective disengagement. That's safer, less risk-taking, less attachment, less trust that the social contract is reciprocal. This is the real long-term risk. A society doesn't need anger to destabilize, it needs indifference. Indifference drains innovation, it weakens community. It turns citizens into operators who follow rules without investing emotionally. The machine keeps running, but nobody believes in it anymore. That's when even small shocks feel heavier than they should. Singapore's strength has always been control. Its weakness will be over-control. Perfect systems struggle with imperfect humans, and humans eventually remind systems that they are not variables. If you expected a dramatic ending, sorry, reality is duller and more dangerous. This video exists because polished narratives dominate feeds, while uncomfortable truths get buried under productivity slogans and skyline shots. So do the boring, unglamorous thing. Like the video, subscribe, share it with someone who still thinks perfect means invincible. Because illusions don't shatter when people attack them. They fade when enough people quietly stop believing.